Welcome to the Nausea River podcast. And okay, let's turn that shit off. I have some better tunes for you tonight. Welcome to a Nausea River podcast. I'm Theo Morgan, and one day I'll have interviewed someone from every band I saw at Kodo in Salem. That is, until the next concert, or if Jeopardy never get back to me. Anyways, what a special night that was, even though it also felt like my life was in shambles. Story for another lifetime. The three-pronged comfort of metal, sushi, and the incestuous nature of Boston metal wrapped me in its embrace. You just heard some of Graveborn's music, and they were the second act that night. And what a fresh take on death metal, if you ask me. The Metal Archives dares to call them deathcore, but honestly, I think all the mosh pit warriors with stretched earlobes wouldn't know what to do with them. There's a lot of prog elements and technical noodling and guitars with extra strings. And then, after their show, I went into cryo-sleep, or bugged the members of Autumn's Ashes instead. If you're a true fan of this show, then you've listened to my interview with Dan Salent and totally went to see Annihilus Mundi open for Septic Flesh. None of this is new. And at first glance, none of this is about Graveborn. It's not that I didn't think about Graveborn afterwards. My podcast focus just fell elsewhere for whatever reason. But one lazy Sunday, I woke up to a curious message from a fellow podcaster, of all people. All right. So, I'm Theo. Introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Chris Ramusiewicz. I am the guitar player in Graveborn. I also filled in for Annihilus Mundi for a little bit, / still am. I'm good friends with Dan Salient, who you had on your podcast before.
Yeah, everyone's good friends with him.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just focus on the music for now. Between Graveborn and Annihilus Mundi, I've seen Chris Ramusiewicz on stage this year more than I've seen my own grandpa. He was the most natural podcast guest that flew right under the radar, and there's a lot to talk about. Some of it is even about music. I hope you enjoy. Yeah, no, he's definitely was one of my favorite guests to have so far.
Yeah, really interesting dude. Always trying hard to do as much as he can musically. And you know, he can do that still. He's younger than me. So he's still got some of that energy left.
Yeah, I definitely do want to focus on Graveborn this episode, but you did open for Septic Flesh.
I did, and honestly, that was one of the bigger shows I've done. It was Annihilus Mundi's third show, I believe, with a band. And Graveborn has been going for nearly a decade, and we had a comparable show maybe one or two times previously in our 10-year career. So it's always real fun to, you know, be part of something that gets almost exactly to where you've been after a 10-year long, let's say, career in about 3 shows. Just goes to show you that knowing the right people matters a whole lot.
Yeah, and like for those Graveborn shows that you say are comparable, were you opening for a larger act?
Oh, yeah. So a comparable one we did recently was over at Jewel in Manchester.
Okay.
There was the Of Sulfur tour coming through. I think it was last year, actually. It was like the beginning of 2024. It was like a February 2024 show, and it was comparably big. Probably a little bit bigger. I mean, Palladium Upstairs and Jewel, I think, are like a similar cap. I actually don't know.
Never been to Jewel in my life.
Oh, that's fine. Well, it's closing, so you've missed your opportunity.
Really?
Yes.
No!
That's what my That's my understanding. Who knows? Maybe it continues on in some form, but my understanding is that it's another one of the inevitable venue closings.
I'm really sad now.
You still got Bad Burger. You still got the Shaskeen over.
I don't go up to New Hampshire because there's not much train connection unless you want to go to Portsmouth.
Yeah, same here, honestly.
Yeah, but they deserve good things.
They do.
And Jewel has had a lot of good shows.
They have. I will say that Jewel is probably the only one that was even bringing any sort of larger touring acts or touring bills through it. I don't think you're going to get a similar touring bill through Bad Burger or the Shaskeen. But
yeah, occasionally you get something cool through Hampton Beach.
Yeah. Actually, metal shows at Hampton Beach would be really sick.
I think like it's like one of the casinos or something. Like I only know about it because the Static X and Guar show this June is going to be there,
Awesome.
and
Okay.
I can't say I'm not curious about that lineup. And also like Guar is always fun live.
Yeah, I would never consider Static X and Guar to be of the same. Well, Static X is edgy in that like 90s way of being edgy in that they had wacky hair.
They both lost their frontman tragically.
Okay, well there's a link.
Yeah,
Tenuous, but it's there.
that's the only one I can think of. Yeah, this is gonna be an episode at Graveborn. I'm just mourning Jewel now.
That's fine. We can mourn
I
a
can add in
lot of
like
venues.
I can add in Dusk and The Great Scott.
Don't forget Sammy's Patio
Sammy's
over on Riviera
Patio.
Beach. All the Great Scott's supposed to be coming back. They're
And good
trying to
old
develop that.
and of course Boiler Room in Providence.
I never went to the Boiler Room. That is one that I never got to check off.
Me neither. Me neither. But like all the good shows were going through like a lot of good like small and local shows would go through Boiler Room, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna have to check this out because Providence is a place I will travel to because I have. It can take a while, but I have lodging with my brother.
Oh yeah, and they have easy train access. I've gotten to Providence sometimes on the commuter rail
Yeah.
to sell something, like from Facebook Marketplace.
Ah,
Literally just like an hour and a half trip down,
oh, that's so
sell
cute,
something in the
actually.
station, and then come back.
Yeah. No, I mostly just go to visit my brother and his wife. He is tolerant of the shows I'll go to. He even walked me to Fet Ballroom once.
Oh, such a gentleman to do that.
Yeah, and like it's not the best neighborhood,
Yeah,
but
I've been to Fet
he's just like,
before.
oh, we'll just park at Federal Hill and walk to Fet. The neighborhood isn't that bad. And like, no, we didn't get shanked, but
Hmm. Has he attended shows with you?
um on occasion he'll
Uh,
do that. He's kind of a metalhead, and our
okay,
plan for
not a total
April.
normie.
Yeah, no, it's not total normie. He's very into doom metal, and that's like
Okay.
basically where it goes for him these days. But that's why on my birthday we're going to see Elder at the Middle East
Hell yeah,
together.
Elder's good stuff.
Yeah, like he's a decent fan of them. This is a silly one, but like he got married sometime in 2023, and
Mhm.
as a joke, I was like, "What show did you miss to get married?" And I looked like through bands in town, like in the archives. I'm like, "You missed Elder and Resin," and he looked a little disappointed.
Well, now you get to make up for it.
Yeah, halfway.
Mhm.
But one day, maybe I don't know if Graveborn would be his taste or not. He used to be bigger into like tech death and gent and stuff like that.
You know what? I don't even know how I would classify
Yeah,
Graveborn.
I do have a question for that later.
I might not have an answer.
You might not have an answer, and I put it in there because I'm like, yeah, I've listened to your music, I've seen you live before, and I still have a little trouble classifying you. And like, it's weird because like I know how I describe you to a casual metalhead, it'd be like, they're like tech death and gent. To someone who's actually
Sure.
like in tune and like has like a very specific taste, I'd be like, hmm.
Yeah, I've always had trouble
And then
with this, to be honest
I'd
with you.
sound like a moron in front of like,
No, I mean, like, classification and genre divisions are such a double-edged sword, I think, because,
mhm.
we're doing that because we as human beings, A, want to categorize things a lot of the time and be able to define its boundaries. And also, you want to know before you invest time, hey, is this a band or some music that I might like? Because there's a squillion bands out there all doing slightly different variations of things, and for some reason a lot of people just don't want to like try it out for a couple of seconds or a minute or something. And I
Mhm.
get it because again, there are so many bands and artists out there all vying for your attention that it can feel kind of overwhelming. So you want to be able to sell someone quickly and be able to say like, "Oh, I'm kind of like this genre," so that you might get their click or their attention or something like that.
Yeah. Like there are people who like try to swing the metal elitism pendulum the other way and say like, well, genres don't matter. You're wasting your time. It's just like, nah.
It doesn't. It
I just
doesn't.
I don't want to, I need to have something that fits my mood at the time.
Yeah, and like
Like,
metal's
and
such a
I'm a
big
very
thing.
mood-oriented person.
Mhm.
But anyways, I always try to start off the interview with the origin of your band. How did Graveborn come to be?
So, it's kind of a long story, but hopefully that's good content for your podcast. But I had graduated college, University of Massachusetts, Boston. I got a
Oh,
music degree from there, and I did some like music ed courses too. So I was kind of like, okay, I haven't been actually in a proper band that was like outside of my high school bands and like some cover band things, even after graduating with a music degree. And so for a couple of years, I like answered an ad on Craigslist for a band called Your Pain is Endearing. That might be a deep cut for a lot of people, but I know some people probably know that band. And frankly, I just like wasn't up to snuff yet in terms of guitar playing to stick it out with that band after like a year. And I just sort of didn't get along with everyone in that band either. So I came to this realization: if I want to be making music that I like, I should write the music. It should be me. I shouldn't have to depend on other people to like write something and then try to hope that they'll make something that I enjoy. Not to say I want to do all the writing, but sort of like, hey, if you want to do something, do it yourself, right? So I put out my own Craigslist ad saying like, hey, I would like to start a band with somebody. Here's a half-ass written song that I've done. And someone answered it. His name was Christian Flores, and he was Graveborn's first vocalist and my first like true writing partner. Off of a Craigslist ad of all things, and he was truly the opposite of what most Craigslist ad jam session experiences are for most musicians. In that he was an accomplished musician and reliable and dependable and actually like did work quite frequently. So he and I ended up writing like the latter half of the first EP that Graveborn released called A Vile Genesis. And at that point I hadn't quite named the band yet, but with my experience from Your Pain is Endearing and like starting afresh, I kind of had this idea in my head of like, okay, I made a misstep. I made a mistake. Or like this didn't work out, but I could always start fresh and anew. And that's really what the name of the band is all about. It's a sort of play on words, you know, Graveborn like a zombie or something like that, but at the same time, every mistake, every failure you go through is a death and an opportunity to try again, be born anew, learn from your mistakes, is the whole concept with this band. So, to make that story a little bit shorter, I made sort of many more mistakes as I went on and wrote more albums and went through lineup changes. Everyone basically really wonderful people that I still know and interact with to this day. And here I am 4 albums later with a crew of people that have been sticking with me for, some of us have been together for a decade. Our youngest, quote unquote, in terms of time spent with us member is Mark, our drummer. We shifted drummers pretty much every release, but Mark seems like he's here to stick around because he just fits so well with the group. And we're about to put out our 5th full release. We got some singles happening. I really glossed over a lot there, but suffice to say, it started out with some Craigslist ads and some bad experiences, and me learning from my mistakes. And I
and you didn't
continue to
get
do so.
shanked.
Yes, somehow I've yet to be shanked in all this time being alive.
Yeah, not from the Craigslist ad.
I would
So are
not
there like,
recommend that.
so are there like no, are you like the only original member left?
Yes, I would
Okay.
say so. Our vocalist Johnny and our bassist Reggie they were part of like the second iteration of the
Okay.
lineup, and then we went through like 1 or 2 more guitar players before we settled on Jesse Blanchett. Um, Settled on like we really had much of, you know, he was just the guy that was around at a certain moment around the finishing of the recording process of our 3rd album, and Jesse has been with us ever since, and that to me is a miracle because Jesse, he also plays in Conforza, super well known around the area, and he's also in Ley Lines, which is a band that
Okay.
he formed like a year or 2 ago, and he's playing with like the drummer of Through the Eyes of the Dead. He's got the former vocalist of The Contortionist fronting that band.
What? Wait.
Yeah, like serious shit there. And they just did a really sweet tour with Pathogenic, and Jesse's still out here playing Graveborn tunes with us. So I'm like,
Yeah.
it's amazing. And
I'm
then
so
I
mad.
mentioned Mark already.
I'm so mad for missing. I'm so mad that Pathogenic and Coroner were touring at the same time, and I had to choose, and
Oh, so you were also at that simultaneous Middle East show.
Yeah, I meanly said there's gonna be more Pathogenic shows.
There will be. There's still
I have seen them live, and they're wonderful, and
they are.
I'd give Dan Leahy a kiss on the forehead.
Yes, what a mensch that man.
I know.
So I also funnily enough, I was at, of course, the Pathogenic and Leyline show next door. But another friend of mine, actually my podcast co-host, Paris Tebow, was at the Coroner show as well with her husband. So there was a lot of crossover happening there between which one are you going to at the Middle East tonight? Considering the Middle East is the only metal venue left open right now in Boston. They just got all the shows.
I know. I think half of it was Coroner never tour.
Yes.
At least never toured the US. And I knew if I went to Pathogenic, I'd probably know the whole audience, which is always great. But one friend I don't see that much, he was like, I love Coroner. I'm going to Coroner. You better come to Coroner and see me. And I'm like, fine.
I'm curious, could you buy tickets to both shows and just bop between? Would they let you do that?
I think they do let as long as you're over 21, so you can get the wristband.
I should try that someday. Just see
because they've sold double features before, notably for the other wonderful schedule where they got Green Lung and Amon Ra on the same night.
Oh,
it's just that that those fan bases it's all doom metal-y stuff. There's fan bases are gonna that's a circle.
Yeah.
And it was very hard for me to decide because I love both bands. I ended up doing Amon Ra.
I wonder if there's a spot in the Middle East that you could stand where you could hear both. Just in the right area, like the back wall.
I think especially with downstairs and Sonya, because they're truly right next to each other.
Yeah, they are.
And I was hearing stuff I always hear stuff from Sonya and I'm queuing for downstairs and vice versa.
Maybe there's a spot where you can if they ever had the triple threat, the upstairs, downstairs, and Sonya, perhaps you could find the exact the people that go to Sun shows and try to find the spot where they vibrate the most. But you're doing 3 different metal shows at the Middle East.
Yeah. I love Boston metal. We got some gems like that.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me how there's slightly different circles of Boston metal.
Oh, totally.
As well. So with Dan from Annihilus Mundi, I feel like when I started interacting with him a little bit more, there was almost all of the bands in Dan's orbit that are their own sort of social circle and sort of the friend groups that cascade out from that. And playing with Annihilus Mundi gave me more access to that group of people as opposed to all the people that are in Graveborn's area, which honestly tends to skew a bit more New Hampshire since 2/5 of that band are New Hampshire people.
Okay. You phonies.
Yeah, right. I know.
No, I grew up near New Hampshire, so I gotta still consider them a sibling state.
There's another ongoing joke in Graveborn where we can't classify our genre. We can't classify even what state we're from because, I'm in South Boston. I'm in Dorchester, really, but sort of South Boston, Dorchester area. Another 2 band members are sort of midway between New Hampshire and Boston. One's in Billerica, one's in Lowell. And then we have one person in Manchester, New Hampshire, and one person in Salem. So it's it's a good enough spread where you can't really say exactly where we're from.
Yeah, but with the circles in Boston metal, I sprung this podcast out of the Summer Gloom crowds, all this Boston doom metal and post metal and weird stuff. Sometimes it's nice going to shows and I'm I don't my mom will ask like I'll go to like a random like local death metal show. My mom will ask, "Oh, are the people from Tears from a Grieving Heart there?" And I'm like, "No, very different crowd."
They look the same to you, Mom, I know, because they still have the angry letter shirts, but it's actually extremely different.
Yeah, I think like the only commonality is Liv Gallop from Ice Giant. She's
Yes.
everything.
Yes, that she is the intersection, I think, of nearly everything
Yeah,
that happens.
she's metalhead goals.
Yes, I would agree. I wish I was as cool as Liv.
Anyways, this is the question that I alluded to. Like, if you had to explain and categorize Graveborn, how would you do it?
Oh man, yeah. You would think I would be prepared for a question like this, having been in, the founding member of the band and in it for like 11 to 12 years, but I still don't know, man. It's prog prog death metal with an atmospheric sort of background to it. Like I listened to a little bit too much Fallujah and like their Flesh Prevails album. Um and once Jesse came in the band, like he's really into like the odd time kind of thing. So actually, I was at an Annihilus Mundi practice before the Septic Flesh show, and I played like a little bit of some unreleased Graveborn material for them, and I was like, "What would you call this?" And they all said it's like if Fallujah and Carbomb had a kid, which kinda, I guess, kind of in some ways that would describe the intersection of mine and Jesse's writing. Um, Mark's also a pretty big odd time kind of guy. So this is a long, rambling way to say it's death metal. Sometimes the leads have reverb and delay all over it. And then also, we don't always stay in 4/4. That's the best way I could categorize Graveborn.
I'd say a little bit of gent-esque chugging too.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, because I think like it became a much more influential genre than I think anyone anticipated.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think we get quite as like funky, like on the backbeat as some Jet
No,
bands do.
at least not on the album. Like I think
Yeah,
I think live you hear a lot more bass. At least I remember that.
for sure. Reggie's got his
Yeah, or I'm just
different
saying this
drummer
because
there.
Reggie is like the only other member I know that well.
Yeah.
No,
Well,
he's
we try to make him the face of the band. He's on the drum head.
no, he's a cool guy.
Very.
Yeah, but I was thinking more like the guitar work. There is a bit of that kind of like static chug.
Yes. We
I don't
like
know
our
much about
chugs.
music. Like you can say time signatures, and I'm like, dog. I'm lucky I didn't get into remedial math.
Well, you know what? It actually doesn't help that if you can count super well with music with some of our stuff sometimes because it's better if you don't count and you just try to follow the rhythm a lot of the time.
What some
I would
time signatures? We did vibe signatures.
Yeah. I would say if you like metal where there is a lot of echoey sounds in it, you might
Mhm.
like Graveborn.
And you know what? I'll drink to that.
Yeah, fair enough.
So I did listen to the most recent album today just to catch myself up more. Um, and you're gonna have a new album.
Yes.
First off, like obviously we're gonna hype it up, but also like what can we expect continuing on from 2021's release?
So there is, of course, still, like I said, nice echoey, atmospheric guitar leads happening here. So I feel like the inclusion of Mark as our drummer has shifted some things in terms of our writing style. Because for Transmigrator, we had a fellow named James Stoner do the drums on that one. Also, someone that Jesse knew. If you don't know Jesse Blanchett from Conforza and Leylines, he knows anyone that has ever picked up a guitar and done like an open palm muted chug on it ever in the New England area. Jesse probably knows them because of that. So he has been instrumental in finding us new band members anytime, really just new drummers anytime we needed them. So Mark's playing is sort of in Jesse's area of like he likes to experiment with like odd time grooves, and Mark has been playing for over 30 years at this point. He is such an amazing drummer, and
I
very
didn't think you
creative.
looked that old.
Yeah, I think he just hit 40. Um, So he is an incredible player, such a creative mind, and there's a lot of stuff that started with drum grooves actually, which was a little bit different for us because so much of other Graveborn stuff was like I crack open a guitar profile and start writing, and then I send recordings of that to everyone else, and then they start riffing off of like the guitar parts. But starting with drum grooves took us to some new interesting places. There's still a lot of the same from Transmigrator, in that very melodic kind of atmospheric. If you know your music theory, there's a lot of sus2 chords, sus4 chords in there still, um, and just more interesting textures. I think is the best way that I can describe it.
Cool. I will say I liked kind of the electronic and synth interludes on Transmigrator. Can we expect more of those?
Yes, so
Cool.
that started appearing somewhat on our second album when I wrote some interludes that were in that vein. I do some electronic music on the side here and there. So most of those synth interludes are stuff that I wrote, and I'm just like really heavy into like the chill wave genre of electronic music. So if you've ever listened to like Home or Emil Rotmeyer or Allison or any of those types of things, I'm super super into that. So that comes out on this album quite a bit. This time, though, it's not completely reserved for like interstitial tracks. There's a little tiny bit of that floating around in some of the actual songs this time around, which I was excited to include. Um, so, yeah, I'm kind of a guy that has my fingers in too many pies at once very frequently, and I want to try to be doing everything. And I want to try to include everything that I do in everything else that I do. So you will be getting more of that electronic stuff for sure.
Yeah, do you have any other musical projects besides this and Chillwave?
So my electronic project is called Yearn,
Hmm.
Yearn. I do video game soundtracks actually. So I do that sort of on the side. Right now, I'm mostly working for like one game company that I've done one soundtrack for. I'm working for a second one. They're Ash and Adams Games. I did their soundtrack for Gobsmacked, which is like a small like goblin arena thing where you're a little tiny goblin fighting trash robots, and I wrote like a sort of metal influenced soundtrack for that. Working on a second game for them now. It's a little bit more acoustic and like shoegazy guitar in some ways, happening on that. And there was also my Power Rangers themed death metal side project that I released one EP for as a joke. That Dan Salient played a show with that band as a bass player. No one came to it, and I feel like I owe him a favor forever for doing that.
It does feel like a very Dan thing to do.
Yes, he was the only bass player insane enough to say like, yeah, I'll dress up in a Green Ranger costume and play songs about Power Rangers with you. Why not?
Yeah, also, if I had to guess, like, who would make the Power Rangers death metal band, it would be him, not you.
Yeah, I would say
Because I
like,
know, because I know he's a bit of a dork.
oh yeah,
Like, I say that as his friend.
of course, yeah. I mean, when I joined Annihilus Mundi, I feel like we were on the same wavelength with nerdiness for sure. I'm not actually like that enormous of a Power Rangers fan, but my brother is. Like, he's an enormous Power Rangers
Oh
fan.
my God.
So by osmosis, I have like tons of Power Rangers knowledge because of that. And I thought, well, this would be funny to do. So Scourge of Eltar was my short-lived Power Rangers death metal project. Still out there on Bandcamp. You can still look it up and listen to those 4 songs.
Yeah, I feel like Dan has name dropped them when saying like what bands he's been in.
Yeah, he
And
shouldn't.
I
I
like
don't think he
forgot
should do that.
I totally forgot to credit them in like in his
It's fine.
episode.
It's totally fine.
And maybe I was saving you.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I don't think they're terrible songs. It's just not.
It's just it's nerd shit.
Yeah, I think there's maybe 10 people in the world that would find it as funny as I did.
I don't know. There are a lot of like 80s and 90s kids out there.
Yeah, I mean, hey, we'll see if it somehow catches on as a cult hit. I don't think it ever will, but it's out there.
We'll just submit it to the Moo board on 4chan and
Please, you know
see who
what?
the biters are.
Might as well. I'm not going on there, that's for sure.
No, not anymore. Now that I'm in my 30s, I realize
Oh,
what
yeah.
a mistake that is.
We've all, well, hey, like I said, we're all learning out here.
Yeah, I didn't know you did music for video games. I know the process for writing music for video games is a lot different because it's not in some way the piece has to keep going.
Yeah. So actually, like creating the loop is kind of tricky, and then it also depends on like what is happening in the game and how long it's going to run for, and whether you want like different layers to come in. So there's like a light coding aspect to it that I don't do much of, but I learned a little bit about integration so that I could deliver things as the actual program is needed. Of that, I've really only worked with like incredibly small teams, like 2 to 5
hmm
person dev teams and things like
Yeah,
that.
but you still have to make your music loop
Yeah,
unless you were just gonna say, actually, I only did the cutscenes.
yeah. I found actually the trick is you like make a loop within your project, and then you just like copy paste it all over again, and then a third time, and you bounce out the middle loop, the middle section. That way, all the reverb tails cascade into each other, and then you bring that bounced one into a new project. You take the last like measure and put it in the front with a fade out as the other one's playing, and then you do the opposite on the other side. Real pain in the ass, but boy oh boy, does it help make it not do the weird jumping clip thing.
That's pretty cool. Does this game studio have like a Steam page or something? Because I'll probably just end up crediting them in the
Yep,
episode.
they are Ash and Adams Games. So the studio is literally called Ash and Adams Games because it's run by two dudes named Ash and Adam. Super cool dudes. I really love their creative process. I wish their games got a little bit more hype than they do because I think they just have a lot of personality. Obviously, I got to contribute some of that personality to it. Um, but yeah, they're like the main group that I've worked for. They have one game out right now where they're working on a second one that I'm doing a project for, and I've done a ton of other like little game jam things here and there. I do have a personal pet project in game audio as well, where I am slowly replacing all of the voice acting lines in the original Dark Souls with people doing Boston accents.
Oh my god!
So Dan Salian actually provided some voices for that. I'm like in the middle of implementing his character. He did King Seeker Frampt and Darkstalker Koth, if that has any meaning to you whatsoever. They're like the serpents that guide you in Dark Souls, and he did all of their lines rewritten as if they're Bostonian. And I have like 7 or 8 other people. Liv Gallup did a voice actually for me for that project. She is the fair lady down in Blighttown, and I have a bunch of other people in like the Boston metal scene that have done a handful of voices as well.
This actually would make me play Dark Souls. I've watched friends play it, so I'm not totally unfamiliar with it. I get the broad concept. I've probably seen these characters, but I've never played it myself. I'm not a huge gamer these days. If I was to say my game pass is like it is niche and maybe not even niche, but it's embarrassing.
I mean, I don't. I think any gamer's history is a little bit embarrassing in some
Yeah,
ways, right? So
yeah. It's just like I think it shows that I have very limited mechanical skill in video games, so I go with like the simplest controls.
if it's fun, it's fun. You know.
Yeah, I didn't like grow up. I didn't grow up with like actual like gaming, like capital G gaming. I was a big fan of like the tycoon games and anything in the
That
sim
counts. That's
titles.
like system management. That's
Oh yeah, it is
complicated
like it is
enough.
a game, but it's like
Yeah.
you don't get mechanical skills with gaming. So like I can run like the best Sim City, but like if you say like this video game lets you run like attack and parry, I will implode. I
Well,
can't do three things.
sounds like that first one has slightly more real world applicable skill. It's a more employable skill, I would say,
I
unless you.
did not get into civil engineering,
Well,
unfortunately.
unfortunately,
Yeah, and like
so many cities that could have been simmed by you and
yeah,
perhaps come into real life.
yeah, Boston would have had a monorail.
Yeah, that you know what? I'm for that. That would have helped.
Yeah, like we wouldn't have had the Greenway, but I still would have done the big dig so I could have the Boston monorail go through the same part.
If only. And yet
And
now
that's how we
here
get the
are
North
cursed.
Station, South Station connection.
Yeah. Oh, you would think that would be the bare minimum that they would do, but
I'm still waiting.
Mhm.
I
As someone
hate
that
it.
has to travel from both North and South Station quite frequently, it's infuriating. How
Yeah,
you
it
just go from one to the other.
it adds like 2 hours if I need to go from like my area to Boston to Worcester or Providence, because like I can't make it from North Station to South Station 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And the trains often run late, so I'm just I have to like have an extra 2 hours in Boston. You know, you can walk from North Station to South Station in way less time than that, but it's silly.
I think everyone in Boston knows the sad state of the T, and it's
Yeah.
it's a
And
running joke for all
it's
of
still
us,
one of the best public transit systems in the US.
which is horrifying.
It's horrifying, but I'll die with my ship burning
Yeah.
to death on the Orange
Hey,
Line.
I appreciate it, man. I wouldn't be able to get anywhere. I can't drive, so like
Yeah, me neither.
I would be stuck.
High five.
Is yours also for like medical reasons, like me?
Yes.
All right, hell yeah, here we are together,
Yeah, I don't know if I'll keep
confined
that.
to the tunnels.
I don't know if I'll keep that bit in the podcast, but
Fair.
yeah, I have neurological issues that prevent me from driving.
I'm legally blind.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Who would have guessed?
Yeah, you can't tell until I look at anything to read. As soon
Yeah,
as you
and
catch me reading something.
Yeah, like I know that legal blindness can manifest in many ways. I guess it doesn't affect music because it's sound and math and theory.
In some ways, it does, just because, like, I literally have to play by feel more than sight sometimes, especially on like dark stages. And
Okay, I guess
but,
there's
like,
that. I wasn't quite thinking about the dark stage thing because I know like I mean I have a friend who's legally blind and one of the big aspects for her is she's just completely night blind. Thankfully she's not a musician or a concert person,
Yeah.
so
I'm the opposite, actually. I'm day blind. I have a severe sunlight sensitivity where like if I'm outside and it is bright, I literally cannot see anything at all.
And okay, I guess that makes your chosen hobby really
Yes.
really convenient.
Yeah, I
But
don't
yeah, like
like being out in the sun or on a beach. My girlfriend likes being on beaches, so that there's some friction there, but
yeah.
I just cover myself with an umbrella.
Yeah. I think like the most embarrassing one, like, yeah, I knew my friend was night blind, like me and another friend did, and we're like, oh, we'll go out to our favorite Japanese restaurant. We forgot that it was very dark in most of the restaurant. Like we were having trouble reading the menus, let alone her. And we're like, this is a terrible idea. Yeah, like with blind musicianship, like maybe Stevie Wonder made it look too easy.
Yeah, I mean, we're out here. We're doing it, and it's totally possible to do it mostly by feel. And luckily, I have plenty of sight where I can be sort of like invisibly disabled, for the most part. Until I can't go to band practice unless someone in Graveborn literally picks me up from a train station, as they have been for like nearly a decade.
So do you have to like get your gear on the train?
Yes. So we practice on Sundays, and every Sunday I strap my guitar to my back. The amps are usually at the practice space.
Okay, that was the big one I was wondering about because I've seen people like carry cellos on the train. So like I figured a guitar is these like small potatoes.
Yeah, generally, I mean the guitar, and like I might have like extra stuff that I'm bringing to practice. Like we're trying lights out this week. I have like this light thing with me, or like the merch, like a segment of our merch inventory is traveling with me, or like I have some pedals in my bag or something like that. So I have cultivated some back problem, like a mild back issue from carrying that stuff, but actually pretty good legs, I gotta say. They're strong. I've been walking around everywhere my whole life and lifting things.
I mean, for me, I'm just like a backpack person, so my arms do not look impressive, but I got some great legs.
Yeah,
Especially because like if I'm going to Boston like for a whole weekend of concerts, I'll just, get an Airbnb or like the cheapest hotel room possible, and I'll stuff all my earthly belongings into a backpack. And in order to save like the $5 for a round trip subway, I'll just walk. I've done some crazy walks.
That's the key to like real nice legs. Is just
Yeah.
like be a public transit rat. Just be a rat in the tunnels. I mean, if you've seen the rats down there, they have some pretty swole legs.
I haven't seen too many of the subway rats. The Alston rats are just
Oh,
swole as
they're
hell
juiced.
because they're
ready to
they're
fight.
feasting on the finest of scraps.
That's true. If only I could eat as
and
much
also
as an
they
Alston
are
rat.
and also they are bold.
Oh yeah, for sure. Even in my neck of the woods over here in Dorchester, on my street, like if you're out past like 7 or 8 p.m., they will straight up just run along the sidewalk with you. They won't even run
Yeah.
away like under a car. They'll be like, I'm out here too, man. This
The
is my
first time
street."
I encountered that, I was terrified. And I'm not someone who thinks themselves a scaredy cat, but I don't want, I think whatever ancestors of mine survived the plague gave me the generational trauma to avoid those fucking things.
Yeah, there's just some gene coding in there that's like, you shouldn't be near those. Don't be near those.
Oh, but we couldn't bury the lead about his podcast forever. Chris first messaged me through the official Instagram account for his podcast, The Terrible Book Club. A long-running podcast involving him and his co-host Paris. It is what you'd expect. Books bearing questionable premises and aesthetics are given a shot every 2 weeks by these two friends. We have a nice talk about it, and considering that Paris is also part of the Boston metal scene as an ex-member of Concilium, I've linked in the episode notes. Check it out.
So you say that you notice that you're legally blind when someone gives you something to read, but you do have the book podcast.
Yes, indeed. I also have a podcast as well, so co-podcasting crossover happening over here, thus the mic setup that I have and all the preparations that I made just to be recorded for this. But yeah, I am one half of the Terrible Book Club podcast, as you found out when I accidentally messaged you from that account instead of the Graveborn account on Instagram.
Yeah, at first I'm like, this better not be marketing.
No, it
is
not.
but
Yes, it is, but not in the way that you would expect. I just simply forgot
I
to
actually
log
read
out.
the message. I'm like, oh my, like this is the first time someone's asked me to be on the show. Usually I'm doing all the work. It's been fine, but
I heard the Dan episode and I was like, that sounds fun. I have a new song coming out with my band. I should go on some podcasts.
yeah.
But yeah, Terrible Book Club has been also running for nearly a decade. I do that with my friend Paris Tebow. She is the singer in doom metal band Concilium, which you may or may not have heard of, kind of depends what circles of doom you run in. And we, every 2 weeks, release an episode of some awful book that we've read. Because one time we used to live together. One time we were standing in the kitchen together, and I was like, man, it would be funny to do a podcast where we just read books that we would actually hate to read to see if we actually. It's like can you judge a book by its cover for real kind of a thing is the premise of that podcast. And we've been doing it ever since. We took like 1 year off, but for like the last 4 or 5 years, it's been every 2 weeks we put an episode out.
I can imagine like best ways to pass the time during COVID.
Yeah, it did help with that quite a bit. And we are now 225 episodes deep. So that's 225 off. Well, not all of them. Some of them are actually surprisingly good, but 225 books that we assumed would be bad when we picked them up. And it is a skill that I don't think anyone needs to have to be able to make their way through that stuff because we've read quite a few thousand pages in our time.
Yeah. Like when I talk to people about music, I want to hear like what they like, who they want to promote. When it comes to books, I've bowed out of the writing space for now. So I want to hear about the real stinkers.
I mean, there's so many shapes and sizes of stinker out there. And like depending on what style of book you like and you don't like, you probably disagree on a lot of fronts. But like I like the, no one has heard of this kind of thing. Like it's not even popular as like a terrible book, because there's some books out there that are sort of like popularly known as being trash. I don't really, it's fun sometimes, but when you find something that like only a handful of people know about, you have to like dig real deep to find a copy of it. Or someone that's like really self-promoting hard to no one, like it's screaming into the void, and they come across our podcast because they're like, hey, it says book in the podcast, and they didn't really dive deeper into it, and we're like, yeah, you fit the bill, we'll read your book. So I can give you some examples of some of my favorite reads from that. There was one book called Splattering Yet Endearing that was a sort of like self-published book that this dude wrote, and the plot is like, hey, there's this college kid and he lives in an apartment with this girl. It's not his girlfriend, but sometimes they sleep in the same bed together, and she'll suck his blood out of his neck and eat raw beef around the house a lot of the time. Also, in the middle of the book, there's a full menu from a steakhouse restaurant placed in there for no reason. There's nothing in the book that needs to go to a steak restaurant or list out every single fucking dish in a steakhouse restaurant, but it's in there. So that was a fun one. There is also the Maradonia series. Maradonia is a fantasy novel series originally written supposedly by uh, a young girl when she was like 10 or something, but Paris and I have our suspicions about who is actually doing the writing there. But she has continued to write the fantasy series into her like late 20s, early 30s, and has not improved one bit. It follows the tale of two siblings, Maya and Joey, as they go to the land of Maradonia to become the Encouragers, which is basically people who encourage others to not give up, to fight against the Dark Lord. That's most of the series. My favorite moment in that series was in book 6, when the two siblings are poisoned and die, and that's when the book series ended. It actually just ended with they fucking died, no one was saved. The end. And then she rebooted it last year.
Okay.
So
I thought it was gonna be a nice tidy ending.
nope. It was one of my favorite things that I ever got out of like a bad book series. Also, while I'm on the topic, there is a movie that was made, a very very low budget movie, that I encourage you to find. It's on YouTube if you look for the Maradonia movie. It is incredible. It is truly incredible. You should at least watch the fairy witches scene, if nothing else. You can find a clip of the fairy witches scene alone on YouTube. It is worth your 4 minutes of time, I promise you.
Okay. The only like bad books, sort of question slash discussion point I have is that when it comes to like people reading bad books, I'm always fascinated by people who actually try to read L. Ron Hubbard stuff, like
Mm.
the science fiction, not like I read Dianetics.
Mm-hmm.
Um, have you ever touched his books on your show?
No, we have not gone down the Hubbard hole
Would
quite
you be
yet.
morally opposed to it?
I don't
Because
think morally opposed. The problem is that he just writes a lot of words, and we
you really
do have something of a soft page limit for books that
okay.
just for our sanity's sake. It's sort of like if it's above 350 pages, then we have to talk about whether we can fit it into the schedule. And Hubbard tends to be like in the 800 to 1000 page area, so that's a lot of mind melting to endure.
Yeah, and I feel like you'd find a lot more dreck if you expanded your criteria, because sometimes the worst writers don't know when to shut up, and I know that's also a big flaw of mine because I used to be a very active creative writer. Not saying I published anything, but I was active in like creative writing groups and having blogs full of serialized output. Um, but boy, like I don't know when to end anything.
It's difficult, and
I would
like
be
I feel,
I'd be the best soap opera writer though.
I mean, yeah, you just
So
gotta find your
in another
format.
timeline,
You
I
just
don't
gotta
have
find
time
your
to
format, right? Everyone's
do
got their
this
niche.
because it's a 200 episode a year commitment.
Yeah, I mean, totally. I could see that working out. And I feel like, whenever I bring up my podcast, some people have a reaction of like, well, that's kind of an asshole thing to do. Like you're just putting creatives down. And like, yes, in some ways, but in the end, we're always trying to encourage the authors not to stop. We never say you shouldn't write. It's just more like, this one didn't work. Here's why we think. Also, no one cares about us. We're a very small podcast. We only have a couple thousand listeners at most. At most. So, like, do you really care? Do you really care what two nobodies are having to say? Turns out some authors really do.
Oh yeah. All right. So one thing I always like to ask is about like favorite shows, but also I know that you've played at RPM Fest before
Hmm.
and you put out like a for your consideration kind of thing to try and get there again.
Yeah.
Are you allowed to say where that's gone?
I don't. I don't. I think it'd be fine because, to be frank with you, we haven't received any correspondence from RPM
Okay.
Fest this year, so I'm guessing probably not on it for this year.
Boo.
Yeah, I mean, we were on it 2 years ago, and I think they do try to like keep it fairly, not exactly the same bands every like 2 years. So I mean, they have a lot of submissions to go through. So
Yeah.
unless we were pulling like big draw, I don't think they'd have a compelling reason to put us on after only a couple of years. But RPM Fest was one of my favorite experiences, and I'm crossing my fingers that I'm wrong, and I get the email in the next couple of days that's like, actually, could you please play RPM Fest 2025?
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of stories from RPM Fest 2024 alum because somehow like in a very short period of time I interviewed the members of Glacier,
Hmm.
Liz Walshak from C, and
Yep.
Zach from Maidenhead.
Hmm. Hmm.
I didn't know what 2023 is like. Like who was playing that year?
Uh, Goblet was there that year. I think Maidenhead actually also played that year.
God's favorite.
Yeah, the Vite Queen was there. I think Misery Index was like one of the headliners that year as well. Oh my god, it's all slipping my mind. I'm so self-centered that I only remember my own band that played that year. But it was a fun time. Like I was just hanging around, having drinks. There was like bubble tea stands around the corner, so I got to have that and like a burger and just like wander around in the heat and like have riffs come at me from two different directions.
That's pretty cool. Are you a mosh pit kind of guy when you're
No, hell
No.
no. Actually, I'm like a pit avoidant. Mostly, I think because of my visual disability makes it hard to
Yeah, that
craft.
actually sounds terrible. Why am I asking this?
No, it's fine. I mean, it's a reasonable question, but it just makes it harder to see people coming at me. So I tend to stay on the perimeter of most shows so that
Yeah.
I'm not caught in the mosh.
Yeah, I can't really mosh, but I'll sometimes stay on the edge of the pit so I can push more people in.
Yeah, that
Like
can
a
be
real
fun.
asshole.
That can be fun. What's that, like reverse crowd killing or something?
Yeah.
Like they're already in there anyway. You're just encouraging them to
Crowd hit,
continue.
man.
Yeah, that's it.
Crowd just giving orders.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think like I did get mosh pit stories from RPM Fest 2024, namely Liz telling me like, oh yeah, there's a guy in like a 1970s Grimace costume.
Oh.
It's just like I would ask you, but it's also like now I don't know if you would have seen it. Now I feel bad.
No, I'm not. I'm not that blind that I would miss a grimace. I think, but yeah,
Yeah, I always try to keep a note of like most interesting mosh pit costumes because I think recently like it's felt a little stale at shows. Like I'll just see the hordes of kids in like kigurumis, banana costumes.
yeah, the banana's a classic.
Saw a pickle costume a few times.
Hmm. Hmm.
I guess stuff that like you can pretty easily buy.
Yeah.
If you're committing to not just Grimace, but 1970s Grimace,
Yeah, that's really up there.
you're doing it for the love of the game.
Yeah, there was actually a couple of shows last October where my partner and I, for Halloween, we had handmade costumes of the Yip Yip aliens from Sesame Street. So I took that costume to two separate shows last October, one at Sammy's Patio and one over at Ralph's during like the Halloween cover series over there. And I wasn't in the pit, but I was in the perimeter. I was in the perimeter of the pit as one of the Yip Yip aliens from Sesame Street.
Yeah,
And
and you'll show up in photos, and that's what really
yeah,
counts.
you can see me in some of those photos.
Yeah. So, do you have any Sammy's Patio memories? Because that's one venue I also never went to.
Plenty. I mean, they hosted Graveborn so many times, and the guy that used to book there, Dante Gata, was super nice to us and always gave us like pretty decent slots. And he's down in North Carolina now. There's another venue down there, Chapel of Bones. It's like a coffee house slash metal venue. Jesse, our other guitar player in Graveborn, went down there with his other band Ley Lines just this last week, and he said it was like incredible down there. So hats off to Dante for moving on to another venue over there. But my favorite Sammy's Patio stories are always just like hanging out in that back area where the blue line goes. Like you can like see the blue line going across there, and like people are just like having a sandwich from one of the sub places down the street, or like ripping a bowl out back, or like having a beer over there between sets, and that's always a fun vibe. Sammy's itself was always just divey. Like you rarely saw it full, even though it was a small venue. It was like, where a lot of small bands get their like first couple shows happening, and they were like some of the first people to let Graveborn play, so they're fantastic launching point. For some reason people didn't like to come out there quite as much, even though it was like right off the blue line. And Sammy always wanted you to play real late. He always wanted it to go to like 1 a.m. And I was like, but I have to catch the train that shuts down at 12:30, Sammy. You're killing me here.
Yeah, this is actually this isn't about Graveborn. This is a bid for Boston to keep the rail running late.
At least till like 1:30. If like at
Yeah.
least till 1:30, then I don't have to like bail on shows super early so that I can make it the fuck home
Yeah,
and look like a jerk.
especially for the more outward lines, because like
Yeah.
the big thing for me is like let's say I'm at O'Brien's or the Paradise or Brighton Music Hall or um sitting outside the Taco Bell that used to be the Great Scott and
Yep.
crying.
Yep.
Like, yes, you're right near the Green Line, but they slow service down at like 7 p.m.
Yes.
and they stop it pretty early too.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, don't you know that that particular line at like the Boston College line, you actually would be getting demand there.
Yeah. I don't. It's a shame because
And there are also like two colleges on that.
yeah, it's like they had so many Boston College stops that they had to consolidate them at some point as well. But I don't know, maybe like I don't know the economics. I'm no public transit civil engineer or what have you, so they must know something I don't.
Yeah. I think so. I work for the state of Massachusetts technically, so I will do my most musk-pilled, doge-coated
Oh, good.
scumfuckery and just like go on see-through and just pick the most bloated salaries I can and be like, we can use that to make the tea run till 2 a.m.
Yeah, you probably only have to find like 2 or 3 of those dudes instead of like firing them.
Yeah,
all
and it's
down.
gonna be like a UMass basketball coach.
Okay, yeah.
Like it's not gonna be like someone. It's not gonna be like DEI hires. Like that's not a real boogeyman, but the basketball coach is.
Probably just like one state police officer.
Yeah.
You could probably fund like a couple of construction projects.
Yeah, but I used to do that more when I made a lot less money.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got enough to be comfortable and I'm like, live and let live.
Yeah.
Stop
Now,
looking at this. It's
now,
not good
now,
for
now
your
you're on the other
skin.
side, and you're like, actually, this is fine. I'm cool over here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all government waste until it's my income.
Yep. Turns out.
What are your favorite still standing venues to play at these days?
To be honest with you, I love a good house show.
Okay.
Which like I know is dodging the question
No, it's
in a
not
lot of
dodging the
ways.
question. I want to know what your favorite parts of that are.
Something well, I think when you're at a even like a small venue, just the size of it can make things feel a bit more spread out. And I don't know, maybe this is just me. It's probably just me. I'm a little bit less socially anxious coming up to someone and talk to them at a house show than I am at a venue. I don't know what the difference is now that I'm saying this
It
out
feels
loud.
more party coded.
Yes, I think that might be it. And like
Yeah,
even if
because
I
like I
don't
know
know
like
you.
small venues are much easier to socialize in. I've probably made half my friends at O'Brien's or something.
Mhm. I'm still terrible. Honestly, like walking up to a stranger at a music venue, I feel like they're just going to like I don't know, throw me through the wall like DJ Jazzy Jeff in Fresh Prince or something, which is like is not going to happen. I'm in therapy, so we're working on that. But at a house show, I don't know, it just feels easier and like some like the tighter quarters again like make it kind of like you said feel party coded in a way that I think even brings other people out of their shell a little bit when they're watching
Hmm.
metal bands. And it just feels more fun that way. But like of the actual proper venues, I like a good O'Brien's. I'm kind of glad that they're trying to redevelop it a little bit and turn it into like Great Scott version 2 and O'Brien's.
Yeah, but
I
it
hope
is gonna be like 18 months without O'Brien's.
yeah. So like literally all there is like the Middle East for metal shows in Boston, right? Like that's gonna be it.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um
and outside, I mean, I saw you at Kodo.
yeah.
That was fun. It's a good novelty to get a sushi roll and
Yeah, that's how I
then watch
convinced
some metal.
my girlfriend's parents to come watch my band for the first time. They've known me for
Ah,
8 years, and like that was like the first time I was like, "There's sushi," and they're like, "All right, that'll work."
yeah, it's just like it's a good hook because like
It is.
I've talked to other people like, yeah, I went to a show in Salem and it was at a sushi restaurant, and I'm like, oh, Kodo.
Yeah, everyone knows Kodo. There's the
Everyone
Lowell
knows,
one now
even if
too.
they forget the name, it's like it's the fucking sushi restaurant.
Yeah, exactly. That will
That I
like
saw
which
that I saw Graveborn or Slamlet Chat or something.
yeah. I was just trying to get a nice maki roll, and all of a sudden people started screaming. I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't understand.
I was complaining about everything closing in Providence, but they have Alchemy. They have
Mhm.
AS220.
Yeah,
Um, I know all the controversies about Fet Lounge and Ballroom with their crowd control, but the one time I went there, I guess they were all asleep because everything seemed fine.
yeah. It's a mixed bag with stuff like that. I mean, Jewel in Manchester kind of had a similar sort of controversy at one point as
Ooh,
well too. Like
do
they
tell.
I don't have much on this one because I'm not paying attention too hard, but like I feel like every other show I played at Jewel and I would step outside for a minute, all of a sudden the security guards would be yelling at each other for some reason. And I was never close enough nor interested enough to like sidle up on it and determine what the issue was. But like, I don't know. I guess it's hard to find good security personnel.
I mean, because usually it's just like some kid who goes to a lot of shows. It's just like, oh, I could get paid for this.
Yeah, I mean, not totally invalid, but when you actually start having to do the job, I bet it's a little trickier than you thought.
Well, I now know the angle I'm gonna take for all the scripted bits this episode.
Yeah, there you go.
I investigate like why is Jewel closing? Why is this the way I'm hearing about it?
Turns out they just kept getting robbed because the security guards were arguing with each other the whole
Yeah.
time, so you could just easily slip in.
Yeah, it's just like there always seems to be something going on at Jewel. It's so sad. And like that they always seem to have a decent array of things.
Yeah,
Like you know, there are a lot of wrestling, like a lot of like amateur wrestling there.
I think so. I think
At
that
least like I
happened.
was looking for shows there just because while Manchester is a pain for me to get to, like I could maybe get a ride. I have friends in the area. I was thinking like we could find common ground and go to Jewel. And I was looking at the roster and it was like 90% wrestling, and I'm like,
You know,
it's not for me.
they were
I think for
trying
my
real
friends
hard
in
to keep the
Manchester,
doors
they probably would
open.
actually like that.
Yeah, I would recommend Bad Burger instead, simply because they do the metal show thing, but you can also get a burger.
And at this point, we talk about shows that have already passed and feats that have been accomplished. And food. It's one of those episodes.
Yeah, and you're playing there on the 22nd, right?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that one. I might attempt to eat a burger mid-set,
Yes.
just for the meme.
Like no hands.
Yep, I could pull it off. I think there's some parts where I could like spare one hand.
Yeah. You just do like, yeah, just like a 0, 0, 0 chug.
Yep, we've got like one or two of those, so I'll see if I can pull it off.
Just extend it a little bit.
hmm
No, it does sound like a cool place.
I haven't played there yet, but I've seen a show
Yeah.
there.
I think
It was very good.
yeah, I've been like vaguely interested in venues that like also serve food. Because I was thinking like if I wanted to do like just an off the wall episode, it would be reviewing venue food.
Yeah,
And like the bottom of the list is Palladium popcorn because I ain't surviving
Oh,
all night
boy.
on that.
Oh yeah.
But I was last time I was there. It was a show Reggie was at. It was the All Shall Perish, Aborted,
Oh.
etc. show a
Mhm.
couple weekends ago. And like I thought I stuffed my face like before the show, but it went from like 2:30 to 11. So
Oh, wow.
by the end of it, I was starved, and like all my only recourse was popcorn and candy from their snack bar.
Oh god. Yeah, that's not enough.
Yeah, and like at some point they didn't allow re-entry even if you had a wristband.
Oof.
So it's not like I could have said like I'm going around the corner.
Mhm. That's rough.
Yeah.
Locking you in with no food.
Yeah, like
could
they
be
let
rough.
you re-enter like between, 2:30 and 6 or something. But after a point they just barred you from it.
That can be
Well,
rough sometimes. You gotta plan.
yeah. So that's at the
around
bottom.
venues like that.
I've always been fascinated by the Middle East menu because I do like some good Lebanese food.
It's all
But I've-
right over there. It's
But I've only ever
fine.
seen people get like burgers and wings there, so it's just like I need to know what the real deal's like.
Having had some of their like, it's fine. I wouldn't like rank it super highly, but it's there and it's different and it's like like it's got some veggie stuff happening in there.
Yeah, I think it's like probably the venue that has like the most vaguely healthy stuff.
Yeah, I would agree there.
Yeah, because that's. I was trying to think of like. No, someone mentioned one of the other restaurants in Cambridge is open real late. It's a Madras Dosa Company in Harvard Square.
Oh,
They're open till 3 a.m.
Damn.
It's just like, as a vegetarian, a place that has vegetarian options and isn't complete trash, open that late, that sounds like you're pulling my leg.
Yeah, I feel like that's a trap somehow.
I feel like it's trapped, but I love Madras Dosa Company. Really good South Indian food.
I should check that out. I'm never.
Yeah, they have
that late
location
in Boston, but
they have location in the Seaport as well.
Oh, okay.
That's where I
Yeah.
discovered them actually, because I went there for lunch before I went to the Institute of Contemporary Art.
Mhm.
So not very metal at all, but the food was top notch.
Hey, we can't always be tough guys all the time, right? Like you gotta
Yeah.
let the masks flip.
I'm a tough guy for tolerating South Indian levels of spice.
Oh.
It can be, yeah, but it's like it's a good restaurant.
I'm a big
Say
food
it
lover.
here.
I don't know, like, have you heard about food before? But like, it's really good. So
It's really gonna pop off soon.
Yeah, I actually have food every day, so I'm sure I could fit.
Sometimes I have
Dosa
it
in my
twice.
schedule. Yeah. On a bad day, like even 4 or 5 times.
So it's a good day.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know I follow Deep Cuts on Instagram, and they're always advertising their sandwich of the day, and sometimes it's a vegetarian one, so they're not leaving me in the dust.
Mm.
Bad Burger might leave me in the dust, but
Yeah,
I
that's
will.
true. I think they did have like a portobello or something
Yeah.
like that. I'm not a vegetarian, but I'm trying to like add a lot more vegetables into my diet, so I'm starting to look for like more vegetarian. You must
Yeah.
know Veggie Galaxy if you're at the Middle East.
Yeah, although I will say that like I turned 30 and my tolerance for like greasy spoon fare just plummeted.
I should probably stop doing the greasy spoon fare as a 35-year-old, but I just can't quit it, man. And some of my favorite foods are still like obnoxious and terrible.
Oh,
So
same here.
I mean, as a meat consumer, there is a restaurant in Cambridge. It's a ramen place called Yume Wakatare,
hmm
and boy, oh boy, they only serve pork ramen, but it is like stuffed with pork fat to a almost disgusting degree. But it is my favorite meal on earth. It is so delicious.
I will say they also, I think they're the ramen stall that tried to serve at Boston Calling one year. And like that's a mistake. You shouldn't be having soup at a festival.
Yeah, I
Because my
mean,
dad was curious. He's like, what better time to try it than sitting randomly in a field? And he's like, this is not a good experience.
yeah,
It'd probably be better if he was sitting down, like at a restaurant, where it could
yeah,
be hotter and in a
yeah.
real bowl.
You really got to consume Yume's ramen as hot as possible for
Yeah.
it to not be congealed.
Yeah, because this was 2018, I think, which is one of the colder Boston Callings I've been to.
Mm. I've never actually been to any Boston Calling.
I I have trouble justifying it these days, but I used to look forward to it quite a bit, especially with my dad, because it was, a bonding experience between
That's true.
us.
They
And
do have
sometimes
some of
he'd
the
buy my
crossover.
ticket for me.
Hey,
That's
there
the
you
big
go.
one.
That's it. That's the ticket right there.
If the lineup looks like if there's a good lineup, it can be a fun day. Like you just kind of have to deal with the crowds and
Yeah.
you have to go in with an open mind, I think. Like you have to say like I'm gonna hang around this stage and just see what comes.
I've definitely like hung around the area before, and just like you can hear the bands from the
Yeah.
distance, so you're getting sort of like the echo of it, and
hmm
that could be kind of fun sometimes.
Yeah, but I
Uh,
think on my festival stuff this year, I want to try to do RPM Fest.
I would
I
thoroughly
don't care if you're
recommend.
there or not.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Go
I'll
ahead. I
probably
would
know someone.
that. Yeah, no, RPM is a great time. I would
What
thoroughly
was your
recommend.
favorite part of it besides
Uh,
yourself?
I like, they actually have a lot of food carts and food stalls. I'm a big food guy. I gotta say,
hmm
I'm extremely food motivated.
And there's a
So
lot out in like the Pioneer Valley.
yeah, but I guess they just have like this one central area. I think it's almost like the fest, their own in-house like food
hmm
area. They're serving like burgers and burritos and even just like some vegetarian stuff over there. But then there's also like bubble tea carts hanging out over there, and like other like coffee shop sort of like pop-up stalls happen in other places. So I mean, if I could be eating something great and then also watching a cool band, that's all I really need to be super happy. So that's why places like the Palladium that don't really have good food access, I'm having a worse time. I just got to be
Yeah,
honest.
especially for those super long shows. Like open up the Palladium outside, have a few food trucks. You're gonna do like some food truck in the area is gonna give the best night of their life.
Yeah, let me bring in a burrito to any show and I will be overjoyed. And I will buy more beers in the venue.
Yeah. And so like at most I've seen people like smuggle protein bars into venues and stuff like that. I mean, because it won't really get flagged by a metal detector.
Yeah, I mean,
Like if you like, hit in your shirt or something.
unless they give you the pat down, right? Just like the
Yeah,
one
because they
wrong.
pat you down at the Palladium. They don't do that every venue.
Yeah, one wrong pat and that burrito is just going to get squished out
Yeah,
into the rest of your body. I
yeah.
say this because the week that when we did the Septic Flesh show,
hmm
I was very hungry and I had to step outside to go somewhere. So by myself, I went around the corner to the Toro Loco Taqueria. It was like a couple of blocks
hmm
away. And I knew I couldn't bring it back in, and our set was in like 30
Wait, so you can't
minutes.
even bring it back in as a musician?
I well maybe, but I'm just not the type to like ask or push the
Yeah.
boundary. So I was like,
And
I'm
I
out
guess
here.
like you're not the guest of honor.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
noticed like since I was really upfront for that show, I finally noticed that like support had their own golden wristbands, like
Yes.
as a mark of shame,
Yes, pretty
and
much.
everyone else had the lanyard.
Yeah. So I went out to Toro Loco, got a burrito, and like completely housed it in the 5-minute walk back to the Palladium. And then I show up to the Palladium doors to get pat down again with like the greasiest hands you've ever seen.
Yeah.
Just like dripping.
Once again, I'd like to thank Chris for coming on the show. Graveborn are planning an album release this year. Keep an eye out for it and check out the single Embers of Existence, which might be their best track in a hot minute. Just my opinion, of course. Anyways, I'm Theo Morgan. That was Chris Ramusiewicz, and I don't know about him, but I will exchange autographs for Kodo sushi rolls. They have some plant-based ones. Or smuggling a bean burrito into the Palladium for me. Wherever we happen to be, I guess.
Any final thoughts that you want to leave the audience on?
You know, check out Graveborn, I guess I could say. By the time this comes out, at least our first single from the upcoming release, Embers of Existence, should have popped up.
Yeah, like 25 minutes to go.
Yeah, exactly. I would also encourage people to check out my friend Paris's band, Concilium. Check out all of Dan Salient's bands, like Annihilus Mundi and Ice Giant, and I think Perennial Quest, and all those fun things there. You should listen to Leylines and Conforza, Jesse Blanchett's other band. You should listen to No More Youth, Reggie's other band, and Sheep Eater, his other band. All that fun stuff.
Yeah, No More Youth. They just announced a few show dates.
Yep, indeed.
Yeah.
Graveborn will also be going on tour in May from the 22nd to the 26th. We're going to New York and Philadelphia, and we're starting over at the Gateway Lounge in Lawrence, Massachusetts as well. So you can catch us over there. Check out Ash and Adam's Games. Check out Gobsmacked. Check out Terrible Book Club. All the stuff. Support your creative friends. We're all doing so much stuff.
You can fill your check out Boston Metal. It's a bit incestuous.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Just start going onto my Metal Archives page and then click through all the other members of other bands that I've shared until it's 3 a.m.
Yeah, we've lost the art of the Metal Archives deep dive.
Yeah, sadly.
Although I used to do that before artist pages were around.
Oh.
That was a journey.
Yeah, truly old school.
Yeah, because those weren't just 2011 or something. Mm-hmm. I've been using the Metal Archive since 2008.
Damn. True OG. True.
No, not even. That site was formed 2002, 2003.
Certainly older than when I was checking it out, because I think I started using it in 2010 or something like that.
Yeah, I'm glad it still exists even as a relic of the old internet. Unchanged, kind of buggy. And slow.
We need more of that, honestly. Not this AI.
Still having a forum.
Yeah.
We're going to revitalize the Metal Archives forum.
That's
I occasionally will post to my old account, and I'm like, oh, please don't read the stuff I wrote in 2011.
Actually, yeah, let's get rid of that. Actually, now, one second thought. Purge it all.
That's the oldest existing record of me.
The internet will keep it there as long as that server's still going along.
And my name isn't attached, so we're good to go.